McNeal, the crypto curator, finally making my way back to you guys. I want to say Happy New Year to everyone. 2023 is off to a good start, but hey, listen, this is Bitcoin is Freedom, and this show is being sponsored by Roundly X. If you haven't heard of Roundly X, you should, because it's really simple. Connect your credit card, debit card to their platform, and then just go on with life as you normally do. What's going to happen is that you're going to get sats every time you take and make a purchase. It's going to round that purchase up to the next nearest dollar, and those cents will go to sats. And before you know it, over time, who knows, you might actually get a Bitcoin. But hey, that's the way we do it. Let's get on with the show.
Here we go.
Let's get started.
Okay, folks. Hey, listen, I've got a really fun show lined up today because there was an article that came out on CoinDesk, and it was talking about self-custody being the future of Bitcoin. And there's nobody I'd rather discuss this topic with than Jon West. Jon West is actually the organizer of Bitcoin McKinney. He also does a lot of consulting on the side for Bitcoin and blockchain. And I thought I'd have him on because, hey, he's incredibly knowledgeable and he can talk about this subject probably better than anyone else that I know. So welcome to the show, Jon.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure and an honor to join you. So really appreciate it.
Awesome. Indeed, indeed. So, folks, most of you might not know, but I have relocated myself to Texas. I live in northern Texas. That's where I actually met Jon. He runs a meetup in McKinney, Texas. That's in the northern part of Texas. And as a result of going to some of his meetups, and it's probably one of the only meetups that I go to, is that one and probably another one in Dallas. This is a meetup is filled with a lot of knowledge, really good people discussing really good topics, the whole 9 yards. But what I want Jon to do for us is give us a little bit about his background, tell us about how he got into Bitcoin, how you even heard about Bitcoin, and then hopefully, as a result of that, we'll move into our topic talking about self-custody. So, Jon, I'm going to give you the floor. How did you learn about Bitcoin?
That's a good question. It actually goes back prior to Bitcoin. The 2008 financial crisis is what sent me eventually down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. In 2008, when that happened, I was in awe. I was struck. I was like, something is broken, and I have no clue what it is. And I thought, I have zero confidence that I can manage wealth long term if I don't learn, what just happened. Because what if it happened again? And so I started down all sorts of rabbit holes, central banks, how governments work, interest rates, inflation, deflation, finance, the whole works. And I found Bitcoin pretty early, 2010, but I poo-pooed it for 5 years. I understood what it was trying to do, what it wanted to do, but I said there's just no way it would work. But 5 years is a long time. I finally, the stubbornness wore off, and I had a lot of other people talking to me. And 2015, I finally went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and I volunteered at work, say I'll dig into this stuff. I led R&D for a big company in the Bitcoin blockchain space, and I eventually left and independently consult and run McKinney Bitcoin. And in my mind, Bitcoin is already a really critical, important financial instrument, and it's only going to grow. And I want my community, the people, local small businesses, local charities to learn and apply it. And that's what McKinney Bitcoin's all about.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny, right, how everybody gets into Bitcoin. Before you know it, they're like leaving their jobs and starting stuff in Bitcoin. So this Bitcoin McKinney, though, but why did you decide that you needed to do Bitcoin McKinney? There's a lot of Bitcoin meetups. Why did you feel the need to start one?
Yeah, we raised our family in McKinney, and then we left and we moved a lot closer to Dallas for 7 years. And there was a lot going on down in Dallas related to Bitcoin, and plugged into all those events. We moved back to McKinney, and there wasn't anything going on. And we're 35 miles north of Dallas, and I'd just gotten further into Bitcoin, and so just wanted to spend more time there. And it was like, hey, let's, my wife and I, Tracy, let's let's just start a meetup up here. People need it here, and there's nothing going on, so let's start the process. And we did that a little over a year ago, and it's gone well. I'm pleasantly surprised, even during a bear market, getting anywhere from 30 to 100 people showing up for a Bitcoin meetup way up in McKinney. It's been fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And the reason I asked that question is because when you look at the entire Bitcoin space, what people got to realize is that there's 8 billion people on the planet, and right now we're still incredibly early. Even though we're 14 years in, we're still incredibly early. So having folks like yourself is instrumental to making sure people who wouldn't probably hear about Bitcoin or might be like yourself, someone who hears about it and poo-poos the idea and then come back 5 years later. But by you having Bitcoin McKinney and the things that you guys are doing up there, I think it's helping other people become aware, especially those store owners. And you might want to talk about that a little bit. I think it's really incredible what you are doing there in McKinney with store owners.
Yeah, so we kind of have, well, not kind of, we do have sort of steps mapped out for individuals.
I don't know if there's a delay or not.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know if John might have lost. Oh,
John.
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so there's steps that we kind of outline for individuals, for small businesses, and for charities. But the Bitcoin payment space was always, all the hoopla, all the rage. But no one wants to spend Bitcoin. And so, convincing a business to do payments wasn't all that useful to them, because eventually they'd get to the question of, well, how do I make money, or how is this better for me, or where are the customers? And there are none. And so we sort of pivoted to Bitcoin rewards. And Bitcoin rewards are an easier way and a faster way to get both the business side and the consumer side involved into Bitcoin, because a business can start selling their store credit. And we focus on small local businesses. Big businesses can do this. Big businesses already are doing this. Small local businesses don't have a solution. And focus on helping them sell their store credit into the local community. And the reason that consumers will buy their store credit and rebuy, and this is like giving them the Starbucks app, giving small businesses the Starbucks app, but the consumer gets Bitcoin rewards instead of cashback rewards. And businesses love it. We're really at the point where we need more consumers now. It's very easy to convince businesses to do this, because I thought businesses, as I talked to a couple hundred small businesses, I thought they would, a large percentage, as soon as they heard me say the word Bitcoin, would poo-poo it and run and say, get away from me. And that's not been the case at all. 95% plus, they're interested. They're like, yes, tell me more. That's interesting. I know it's coming. That's a community I want to reach. So, what does it mean? Tell me more. Let me learn. And so that's been a big focus, and it's been successful with businesses. And we've gotten, like 50 businesses between McKinney and Dallas, most of them in McKinney, on Oshi, giving Bitcoin rewards. And now we just need to get more consumers using it. But I think that's a great way to, help small, because eventually once they're selling their store credit, they're selling it for Bitcoin. They get dollars, but they can choose to receive Bitcoin, and they're positioned, to receive Bitcoin payments. So it's a good first step for small businesses.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. And that's why, I wanted to let people know, not only they're in McKinney, but hopefully other people are watching this and they're seeing this and they're saying, wow, that's something that even we can do. And all of a sudden, maybe we can help keep spreading this adoption of actual using Bitcoin here in the States. Because again, in developed countries, is there a diehard need for it? Not right now. There's probably not. There's so many ways to do payments, but I believe that this is going to be the future. And so again, what you guys are doing there in McKinney, I think is going to be top notch, and probably leading the rest of the folks, hopefully more and more, especially in Texas. We got a governor that actually loves Bitcoin. And so we're building things out.
Agreed.
All right, good. Well, hey, let's jump into this topic about self custody. Now, again, we had a conversation, brief conversation in your Telegram group, but here's the thing: that article from CoinDesk was highlighting that the block, and if people are familiar with the block, that's Jack Dorsey's company, and I guess it's not the block; it's just Block. It was Square, and Square renamed themselves Block, and so they have now come out, or they're coming out with a Bitcoin wallet that's going to allow you to basically self-custody Bitcoin using multi-sig and actually having a hardware device with it, which I think is a really cool and creative way. But what Max Guy said is that he thinks the future of Bitcoin is going to be self-custody. And I want to sort of get your thoughts on that too. I know you've been talking about self-custody. We've been having these conversations about, will everyone self-custody Bitcoin? Some believe, no, there's no way some of these people are ever going to self-custody. Do you think that the future is self-custody?
The short answer is no, I don't think everyone will self-custody. But I will back up though and first say there's self-custody. That concept is so critical. And Bitcoin brings that ability. And it's one of the major advantages that Bitcoin has over gold. And it's one of the reasons that gold failed is because the governments hold it all. People don't self-custody gold. And that's why we lost, one of the reasons, there's many, but why we lost sound money. Self-custody, all of the scams, all of the fraud, all of the losses, that we see could be avoided with self-custody. Doesn't mean that people are going to all the time, but it could be. Even in the fiat world, our government really is the one that directly and indirectly controls our money. They hold our money. They custody our money. That's a problem. That's a big problem. That's why, we have a lot of the, problems that we have today, whether it's, KYC and whether or not it works, or the inflation, or, money printing, the wealth gap, and those kinds of things. So the importance of self-custody, I can't overemphasize as being super, super important. The debate is about, well, how does it play out? Everyone knows or agrees that we have to have it, but does that mean that every single person on the planet self-custodies, their Bitcoin individually on their own? And I've at this point fallen to the camp that no, I don't think every single person needs to or will self-custody. I think that, and another way of saying this is, one of the things that Bitcoin brought to the forefront is questioning whether or not we should trust institutions or other people, companies. It gets referred to as trustless. This word trustless came into being. And with Bitcoin, we're no longer trusting big government to control money, to establish the monetary policy. That's a really, really good thing. But I don't think we will throw trust completely out the door. I think trusting big government is the problem. It isn't that trust is the problem. And so I think this whole decentralized movement, which is good, we have our governments are too big, our companies are too big, and then we run into corruption. But what it might look like in the future is we're trusting institutions or even family members or small businesses to do things because trusting is so efficient and it lets people specialize. We're not trusting big institutions. So you have a project like Fediment, that's allowing people to say, okay, this person in our family is technical and knows how to do this stuff, so we're going to trust them, to be the guardian of our Bitcoin, type of a thing. Or, this small business, is trustworthy, and this group of people trust this small business, and they're going to trust them. And so I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but I don't think it's every single person is going to self-custody their Bitcoin, nor do I think we need that to be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because this conversation of self custody is so big. I look at it even like I look at something like a Web3 or DeFi and all this stuff. This conversation is so big because there's so many different aspects of custody. Just as an individual, yes, there might be some people that custody their own, but as an individual, if I'm holding Bitcoin in an IRA, I can't self custody that. I have to have that with a third party because that's the law. Like I can't get around that. And some people say, well, but you probably can, but you have to do a self-directed LLC and all this. I mean, it gets incredibly complex to begin to custody in certain aspects. And what you just said is important too. Whether people in crypto realize this or not, our entire ethos as a society is built around centralized entities. It just is. Your banks, third party companies, there's so much trust that we have that's just baked into the fabric of our society. Seeing us completely pull out of that into a totally decentralized self custody, it's just not feasible. But with that being said, let me ask you this, John. For an individual, how many different ways are there really to custody Bitcoin, and what does that sort of mean? Because you like the Max Guys was on the video for CoinDesk, and he was talking about in the reporter there sort of got it wrong. She said, "So you mean to tell me this little device has your keys and your coins on it?" And I'm like, that device doesn't have any coins. People talk about coins in Bitcoin. There are no coins really anywhere. Can you talk to that a little bit? What is it? What is this whole self custody of coins and keys?
Yeah, so there's two questions in there.
Yeah.
One is how many different ways are there? But another question too is the argument is that it's easy to self custody, and therefore everyone will do it. And I don't think that it is necessary. It isn't easy to self custody. Now, another argument, rightly so, will be, well, it's not easy to manage all your fiat accounts either and stay out of trouble there. You have to learn it. And I agree with that logic too. I think Bitcoin self-custody is a little bit harder right now than, or a little bit to a lot harder right now than managing fiat accounts. But that'll probably change. That could very easily flip in the future. But anyway, to go back to your question, the types of self-custody I think are pretty simple. It's, you give somebody else full custody, and who you give full custody is even, there's degrees there. You give some of these crypto companies full custody and you're just like shooting yourself in the head. There's no doubt. You give a trust, in the US, that full custody, then there are several, that's going to be a lot safer, where all they're doing is custodying. That's all they are as a custodian. They're a US custodian. It's going to be safer. Then you go to a smaller Bitcoin company, and trust them, that's probably even going to be safer. Then you go to, whatever, a family member or that type of thing. And then you go to, your own self doing the work. So those are just an example of sort of the levels, if that makes sense.
Right. And so let me ask you this. If we were to go back, and I guess, where did this whole self custody and stuff start from in the beginning? I mean, when Bitcoin first started, it was, of course, Satoshi and that group, and they put the information out there in the wild, and then you start having these nodes and miners, and then people started mining it, and then those Bitcoin miners, they were holding their own Bitcoin, but I'm assuming they were holding their own Bitcoin on computers like what we're even using right now. And then from there, then Mt. Gox came around and was allowing people to exchange. But when Mt. Gox blew up, I think that's where not your keys, not your coins came from. Is that right? Or do you remember?
I think you're right. No, I don't remember, but I think you are right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think they came back. So when Mt. Gox blew up, and I remember Caitlin Long saying this, her Mt. Gox moment, because I think she lost money in Mt. Gox. That scared people. And so people were like, wait a minute, if I have money on an exchange like Mt. Gox, which was the only one at the time, I can lose my Bitcoin.
Yeah, that was the realization. Not only that you could lose Bitcoin, but it's sort of also the realization that how those exchanges are different than fiat exchanges in terms of there's no backing by the government. There's no insurance. And this is a point that Caitlin makes all the time too, is Bitcoin, rightly so, this is what we want, has no lender of last resort. There is no central bank that can make more Bitcoin. And when people first hear that, they think, oh, that's bad. And it's like, no, that's good. The problems we have in the if the central bank were not the lender of last resort today for fiat, we wouldn't have problems. Bitcoin wouldn't exist. That's how we get into the mess that we're in, is because the central bank sells this story of, oh, we're the lender of last resort, and that's good, which means we can print money at any point when we get into trouble and paper over problems. But anyway, that's sort of another lesson of the the Mt. Gox thing. It wasn't just not my key, not your keys, not your coin, but it was like there's no lender of last resort here for Bitcoin. There's no backup. There's no backstop. You can't print more. You can't paper over these problems when you have these big failures. There's no such thing as too big to fail.
Right. Isn't it crazy, John, that after Mt. Gox, in that article that Nick just put up, talking about what happens when an exchange sort of blows up, we compounded that problem to the 100th% when we created Celsius, Voyager, BlockFi, FTX, Alameda, all of this stuff. Did we not learn from Mt. Gox?
Nope. Well, actually, yes, but the number of people that learned were small, right? And so as more and more people come in, this is good. I mean, it'll happen again. We're still early. There's still a small number of people. Other people are going to have to learn this lesson. I think this lesson goes on and repeats. I have no idea when it ends or when enough people know. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So after Mt. Gox, then we started hearing about these things called a ledger or Trezor or all these other devices. And this is what I think a lot of people in crypto push people to, because with FTX blowing up, we saw $8 billion leave exchanges and go to hardware devices, right? Is that the best way to self-custody, is on a ledger? Because if you listen to Ledger, they'll tell you that's the best way to self-custody.
Yeah, so I've helped, 20 plus people self-custody. And my experience was it's not easy to help people learn it. And, I thought, okay, about 30% of the people that I helped really got it, jumped in, could parse it and that kind of stuff. But some of the examples, and that's kind of why I came to the conclusion that not everybody's going to do it. And especially now early, and there's a lot of, work to do. It doesn't lessen the importance. But anyway, it's just, it's things, it's not as simple as, okay, create a passphrase, memorize your passphrase and have, 12 or 24 words and write them down, and put them in 2 different places. Now you're done. Now, technically, you have a backup. Now, you can't technically lose your Bitcoin as long as you've done those simple steps. But as you're going through the process, there's a lot of little nuance there. One, just even learning this phrase, you got to make sure, because a person's habit or their natural inclination when they see those words isn't to write them down, it's to take a picture. I want to back up, take a picture. Okay, well now you've just given your password, your words to the world. Or, a phishing attack. It's like type your words into your computer. It's like you can never, ever type these words, on some web page. It's like getting people to understand what these words are and what happens when you die. And also when you start this process, you're plugging your hardware wallet into your computer. Are you sure your computer is clean? And are you going to keep it clean? or do you want to have a separate
Mm-hmm.
device for these types of things? So
Right.
there's a list of, 15, 20 questions like that people kind of need to go through and to think about
Right.
in order to do self-custody. It's very learnable, and it's going to become much easier as we go through it. But, will everybody in the whole world do all of that at some point? I don't think so. And nor will they
Now
need to.
you said words. You you
Yeah.
you said words. What do you mean by words?
This. So if I have you can probably explain this better than me, but if I have a hardware wallet,
Mm-hmm.
and my things called my private keys, are on that
Mm-hmm.
hardware wallet, the way that those
Mm-hmm.
that lets me control my Bitcoin is that hardware wallet. To
Mm-hmm.
what you said earlier, that's not where my Bitcoin is. It's just my key, my private key to control that Bitcoin. And that private key is an ugly, whatever, 232 character sequence that you would never
Yep.
memorize, or you would always get wrong.
Nope.
So instead of writing that down, or instead of trying to memorize that, it's what you start with is you start with 12 words, or 24 words, and then the wallet uses those words to generate those keys. And so
Jeez.
those words, you could take those words anywhere in the world. You don't need your wallet. Excuse me. Just take those words with you anywhere in the world, and you can create another private key from them. So those words are very, very important. You have to protect them, and you can't lose them. And as long as you protect them and can't
Yeah.
lose them forever, passing on to your heirs and such, you're good.
Did
I
you
mean,
see
another
that
thing.
story where
Go ahead.
did you see that story where the police officer pulled someone over and they had their mnemonic phrase in the car on a piece of, I mean, who does that? Why would you even carry that around with you?
Because you don't understand what it is.
That's the crazy thing. It's like I can't believe someone wrote that down on a piece of paper, had it in their car, and then the crazy thing is the police actually, I mean, looks at it. It's like, don't put that on video. Like that's someone's access to their money, and this is what a lot of people don't understand is that those words are powerful because with those words you have access to your money. And if you're gonna just lay that around anywhere, that's like me just putting cash in my car and just leaving the cash in the car. Someone can take it,
Yeah.
right?
Now, I will say though that people will learn very fast. And so, which is good. And there's they have to learn. They will learn. Just like don't leave cash laying around. They learn that pretty quickly. And then especially when some people learn, their parents start teaching their kids. It'll happen where people learn that. And we could also sit here and talk about all of the problems and all of the effort it takes to secure and use and manage legacy fiat accounts as well. So that stuff
Mhm.
isn't that far behind. And here's a really simple example. Most people don't use two-factor authentication. It's one of the
Correct.
easiest things in the world to use. And they don't, well, not easiest. To achieve security, it's one of the easiest ways.
Right.
It's so simple to just massively improve your security. It's two-factor authentication. Well, the thing is, if you learn how to use two-factor authentication and how to manage it, you've learned a lot about how to manage Bitcoin. Because this is a subtle thing, and I think this is really important. So if I use Google Auth, and Google Auth is generating that number that I enter when I log into my bank account, right? So that prevents anybody else from logging into my bank account. So it's very, very powerful. What happens if I lose my phone? I can't just go get a new phone.
Correct.
And my backup won't put that Google Auth on my phone. I have to have a recovery key.
That's right.
The same type of recovery key that you need to recover your crypto. So
Yep.
to secure legacy, you have to do the exact same thing. And which means that what Bitcoin is doing, it's like, to secure things in a way, it's, well, in a lot of ways, it's nothing new, which is good. It means it's using tried and true stuff. And it's just, people are becoming more dependent on it, even in the legacy world.
Yeah, and again, looking at pros and cons of self-custody, because there is a pro to self-custody. What happened with Celsius, Voyager, BlockFi, FTX, all of that could have been avoided if people were actually self-custodying their Bitcoin and wasn't using it. And again, like I said, there's layers here, because as an individual, that's true. But what if I'm a hedge fund? What if I'm a VC and I am trying to trade these digital assets? Self-custodying doesn't make sense in that scenario, because I'm trying to make money with this money. And so, you have an issue. But had they done that, it would have been safe. But one of the cons of self-custodying is what happened to the guy in China that went to this event or whatever. Someone wind up getting in the car with him, whatever. And I don't even understand the story if it's true. But apparently this guy had $4 million in his ledger, and the guy forced him to open his phone with his facial ID and open up his app and stole his money. So if you're custodying your own money, you're now responsible to safeguard that money. That's a big responsibility, and some people might not be designed to do that. So are there other ways people can self-custody other than putting it on a ledger or a hardware wallet and all this other nonsense?
No, I don't think so. I mean, unless you trust somebody.
Well,
what's your answer?
Yeah, unless you trust somebody in this. Well, this is where multi-sig comes in, though, right? This is what Block was talking about doing with their new phone and their new little deal, is that multi-sig. They're saying your device is one key, your phone is the second key. It takes two keys to move Bitcoin, right? And so if this works, and Jack Dorsey is trying to hit this up, and he said you never take this second device around with you. You leave that somewhere safeguarded, so you have your phone, basically, and that's one of your keys. And then, of course, I'm assuming maybe Block has another one, but I don't know. But Unchained Capital sort of does the same thing, right? I think that like you said, it's hard, but it's not hard to self-custody your own crypto in a responsible way. And you mentioned it earlier. What happens if you kill over? I remember way early back in the day, and this is what even with Bitcoin, but some guy died and had a bunch of Ripple. It's all gone. You can't get access to it. He's the only person with the key. So then what do you do? So this is what people have to understand. If you're trying to self-custody your assets, what do you do if you pass away abruptly and no one has your keys?
Yep, you're 100% right. I mean, it's good that the Ripple's gone, but you're 100% right. But and the point you're bringing up too, in terms of, I guess, another degree of self-custody is you can have a third party. You don't even have to trust them in terms of being able to move your Bitcoin. You can just trust them as a backup to help you if you lose one of your keys. So, and that's one of the nice things that Unchained does, is, they don't have to control. Now, you can give them control if you want. If you're so uncomfortable and you have zero confidence at this point. But the other part too is, in the beginning, someone could trust an Unchained, and later on, after a year or 2 years, they could say, okay, now I'm ready to graduate to where you're only holding a backup for me, and I'm holding, 2 keys or whatever. And then later on, they could even graduate further to say, no, I don't even need you to hold my backup for me anymore. So this space is going to evolve a lot, and new solutions are coming, and, Unchained will evolve and that kind of stuff too. So.
Yeah, even before Unchained came around, I remember, and I can't remember her name, she was talking with Andreas Antonopoulos, and they were talking about estate planning. And this is the problem, though, because let's just say Unchained didn't exist. Let's say there wasn't multi-sig. Let's say I was trying to custody it. How do I do that responsibly, that if something did happen? One, I'm not going to give my seed phrase to family members. That's ludicrous. What happens if they get upset? They can go steal all my money. That's not going to work, right? And so I can't give them access to it, well, you can split it up the words and give it to multiple ones. But this is the complexity of this whole self-custody business that people have to understand, especially people in crypto, because they all will beat the drum. Not your keys, not your coins, not your. And guys, I get that, but you also have to understand. I tried using Ledger once, and I'm telling you, the hiccups, the technicality issues that I ran into with the Ledger not working and the software. Folks, listen. We like to think that this stuff is super easy. It's not that easy. And so if a non-technical person get involved trying to self-custody their crypto and they don't know what they're doing, they're going to lose it. And there's nobody to help them get it back.
First and foremost, not your keys, not your coins. It applies to crypto exchanges, DeFi world, all of that new stuff that ironically is regulated, but regulations are never applied. And they're doing stuff that's illegal and scamish and ripping people off, and they're getting away with it. So then the next level is even I mentioned these trusts, these guardians, these custodians, US licensed custodians. Well, they're more likely going to be honest with you. They're safer, but they're also at the risk of the fiat system. And so when you see big fiat failures, it doesn't, if your Bitcoin is with a custodian that is affected by, the next big fiat failure, then you're at risk. And that's why, like Bitcoin IRAs are so interesting. If you want to invest in Bitcoin in your IRA, you can buy GBTC, but that has problems right now. That has risk too, because you don't hold the Bitcoin, or you could, again, work with Unchained and set up an IRA. They help you with that complexity that you mentioned before. And then you hold your own Bitcoin. You're the only one that holds your own Bitcoin in an IRA. You could literally leave the country with it, which would be illegal, but it just exemplifies the fact that you hold it. So if something happens in the fiat world, that the custodian is not going to be able to pull some shenanigans on you because they can't, move your Bitcoin or do anything, or your IRA custodian type person. So yeah, there is a lot of power to self-custody, but it's not one answer, is I think the point that we keep making over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's not one answer. And again, for each individual, I think it's important that you do the work to understand all this so that you can determine what's the best avenue for you. Because like I said, and one of the other things that Andreas Antonopoulos talked about is having different buckets, right? And so when we look at Bitcoin, we talk about it in one, like it's all or nothing. And I think it might be a little mixed. There might be some people that have a certain amount of Bitcoin in cold storage, means you put it on Ledger, detach it from everything, and you leave it somewhere secure. Some people might have some Bitcoin on a software wallet, which is a wallet on your computer, because they might want to move that back to an exchange and then trade with it or whatever. And then there's some people that leave some Bitcoin on exchange because they're actively trading with it. There's a multitude of different aspects of one individual and what they do with their Bitcoin. So you have to sort of noodle through all that, figure out how are you going to do this, because even like with the developer, Luke Dash Jr., look what just happened to him. This is a developer, OG Bitcoin developer, which I'm still a suspect of the story, that he had someone hack his computer and he lost 200 plus Bitcoin. How does an OG developer let that happen? I mean, it's like, I don't get this. And I don't know if you pay attention to that story, if you noodled it on it. Do you think it's true? Do you think he literally lost it?
If he did, he probably did. But if he did, I mean, he made it appear, and he hasn't confirmed this, but all of the evidence points to him making a mistake that no one believes that he could have made. And that was, he did not move his, 12 words or his 24 words, on a steel plate or on paper. He actually encrypted them on his computer. He stored his phrases digitally, which is like, this is why people just can't believe somebody that smart. He's probably too smart for his own good. He thought he could do it in a way that protected it. Well, it's what exactly he thought. And so that's the lesson. It's, but that gets turned into, I know, but it gets turned into the story of, okay, if he can't self-custody, then it's, impossible for anyone to, which is totally the wrong story, because if the evidence is pointing at the right answer, he totally screwed up. He made the dumbest mistake by far, not of just his life, that anybody could make, and storing his words digitally. Just plain silly.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same in the fiat world, though, right, John? Listen, what do they tell you? Again, if you happen to be in the situation, which most of us are not in the situation, but if you've got millions upon millions of dollars, you don't put all that in one bank account and that bank get hit and all your money's gone. They tell you what, $250,000 you keep in one account at one bank because FDIC insures, right? So if you've got all of this money, putting it all in one spot is a dumb thing to do.
You're right. I mean, what people do is they buy treasuries. They don't, cash for wealthy is treasuries, or they own stocks, or they own real estates, or, what's interesting. Yeah. No, I was going to go on a rabbit trail. But
yeah.
No.
And again, that's the thing, is that, again, like I said, with self-custody, we talk about it, especially in the crypto world, with the conversations we have in some of these discussions, is we're talking about it from an individual perspective. What about corporations? What about family offices? What about institutions? What about, everyone will not self-custody the same way. I don't think.
I think, no, they won't. But I think that obviously the answer is going to be it's going to be way more obvious in whatever it is, 5 years, 10 years. So I think that the problem is, today we have these massive custodians that are essentially controlled and owned by big government. That's why everybody is so vehemently opposed to custody. It's because we're trusting these massive corrupt institutions, and they're proving, and even just these new crypto institutions and the massive existing ones, they're proving that they're not trustworthy. And in the future, and I think the Fediment stuff is an example. Custodians get massively decentralized. So who your trust is not bad. It's who you're trusting is bad. And, I can trust a family office. I can trust a family member. I can trust a business owner, that, 10 of my best friends trust. So instead of there being whatever there are today, let's say there's 100,000 legal custodians in the world. In the future, there'll be 100 million legal custodians. And you just know who you're trusting instead of blindly trusting a massive organization. That's how I think right now this plays out.
Yeah. Well, again, folks, hey, listen, as John sort of mentioned before, Unchained Capital is one of the sponsors. They do a lot here in the North Texas area with these Bitcoin meetups that we have. They sponsor a lot of them. And so just as a give back to them, I definitely would recommend taking a look at Unchained Capital at a minimum. Do your homework. You've got to determine if this is something for you or not. But I'm telling you, as a quick elementary step, because they have different layers. Listen, if you're experienced enough and you know what you're doing, go to Unchained. They'll let you self-custody your own crypto with multi-sig, and there's no cost to it. But if you're someone who needs some hand holding, someone who needs someone to work with them, you can talk to Unchained. They'll help you move your Bitcoin, put it in a safe, secure way, again, using multi-sig. As John said, listen, you got 3 keys. They hold one, you hold one, give one to a family member or loved one. It takes 2 of the 3 to move your Bitcoin. That's that's just so simple to do. It's not difficult, not hard, doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, and at least you know your assets are safe at a minimum. So definitely check out Unchained Capital. I think that you'll be pleased by what you read, and hopefully you'll make some type of a decision as to what you need to do. Now, I do want to talk to Jon about the market, because I think we're in a very interesting place. We're kicking off 2023. We just came from, and still probably in, a brutal bear market, crypto winter. Jon, where do you think we go to from here?
I think all eyes are on the Fed. So if as soon as either the market is going to the bond market right now, I think the bond market is trying to tell the Fed your hikes are over. So the question is, who blinks? Does the Fed blink, or does the bond market blink? And so if the Fed raises again, does the bond market say, no, we told you were done? Or can the Fed raise again and the bond market says, okay, fine, now you're done? So unfortunately, that's the world we live in today, because of, fiat and money printing is, these 4 people at the US Fed, has the most influence on this type of stuff. So, and it will turn. So I don't know. So the question is, it will turn. It's like, is it 1 month away or 6 months away? I don't know.
And Jon, this is what I try to explain to people, having gone through several of these sort of boom bust cycles, whether they call them the 4-year cycle or whatever they want to call them. Right now, yeah, people are in fear, yeah, but look what all the crap that happened, right? Celsius, all the C5 blow up, and then you got FTX and this Alameda stuff, and now we got Genesis that's possibly going to have an issue, and maybe Huobi is going to have an issue, and maybe there's another shoe to fall. Bitcoin is being incredibly resilient in this environment. The fact that we're still at 16.9 says a lot, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you look at the long-term chart of Bitcoin, a lot of people say the last big all-time high, besides the near 70,000, was 20,000. Well, actually, if you look at that candle, it ran up to 20, but then it closed for that month around $13,000-$14,000. So if we were to come back and touch that, we still wouldn't have violated the last technically all-time high on the long-term scale. So it's been incredibly resilient. I think, as you said, the time, who knows what time it's going to take. Bitcoin's not dead, right? Do you think Bitcoin's dead? Do you think we're going to go down to 8 and 5 and back to 0?
No, Bitcoin's not dead. I don't know what price we go to. The fiat system has ensured that Bitcoin's not dead.
Well, why do you say that, though? I mean, you have some people that are, they're not Bitcoiners, they're not crypto. They're the old school folks. Again, someone like Warren Buffett, or someone like Peter Schiff, or someone like these guys. They think that this is just still magical internet money. Is it not magical internet money? I mean,
well, only if you don't understand it. So once you start studying money, and you start studying the characteristics of money, so durability, divisibility, scarcity, fungibility, these well-known, well-accepted characteristics of money. And gold has, been the best element to meet those characteristics for thousands of years. Then you start looking at cycles that the world goes through. There lots of people study this. Lots of people, go deep into this and write about this and study history and explain this. The 50-year cycle, the 100-year cycle, the 250-year cycle, financial cycle, political cycles, technology cycles, and you start piecing these things together and studying them. If history is accurate, it is very, very obvious that we are going through these cycles. And the financial cycle being, if history is accurate, the US dollar ends, it's at the tail end of being the reserve currency. You don't have to guess about that or speculate. If you look at history, it happens over and over and over again. We're on the sixth one since the 1400s. And if history is accurate, we return to sound money. You don't have to speculate. You don't have to guess. If you look at history, it says we return to sound money. It's always been gold. Never before have we had two choices. Then you can start looking at, well, evaluate Bitcoin against gold on these money characteristics. And even Bitcoin brings characteristics that gold could never have. But there are so many mainstream, wealthy institutions, even governments, that look at this and recognize this. It's just that the masses of people always take longer. They look at these qualities of money and they say fiat is failing, gold is failing, Bitcoin is the only money that achieves these traits. And oh, by the way, it does it 10x better than these others did. So Bitcoin will likely win. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but man, when you start studying money, you start studying history, it becomes very obvious that Bitcoin will likely win. And we're at the tail end of the cycle versus the beginning. We're closer to the end or the beginning of the new cycle.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to take a lot of effort to get the mainstream to really understand this, because it's a shift in our thinking. It's a shift in our mindset. We've been so used to the fiat world. It's hard to shift yourself into the Bitcoin standard from what we're so used to with fiat and the way that centralized entities work and the way that our money is being controlled. Again, I tell the average person, the money in the bank is not yours. They could tomorrow do a bail-in, and they could say, hey, on Friday, you have $100. On Monday, you got $50, because we are doing a bail-in, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. They can. They have. They just haven't done it in, they haven't done it a lot yet. They haven't done it in the U.S., but I saw I think it was on LinkedIn today, but somebody was, it was Wire, WYRE, some crypto company of some sort, had put out an announcement that said limited withdrawal. You can only withdraw up to 90% of your funds. And so the caption was, okay, now instead of withdrawals ended, now, instead of saying no withdrawal, now they're saying limited withdrawal. That's the new easy, light way of saying, hey, bank's closed, sorry. And they're blaming crypto, rightly so. It was a crypto company, but it just struck me. It's like, that's eventually coming to a fiat bank, near us one day. They'll say, instead of you can't withdraw any money, limited withdrawal. You can take, and they do that today even, right? A lot of times you can only take $500 a day from your ATM card. But that'll continue to get worse slowly, and we could see a big event at some point. You get $500 a week, limited withdrawal type of a thing. So that's the situation we're in. And I think people, more and more so, I'm curious what you think, Paul, people sense way more now that the system, the financial system is breaking, start looking for other things. I think people definitely, even just the fact that LinkedIn talks about this so much compared to a year ago. I would say LinkedIn talks about the financial system 1,000, 10,000 times more percent than it did, a year ago. So I think people sense it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And again, this is why the work that you're doing is so valuable, because it's going to help people who are looking for that exit and they don't know it today, but when they get ready for the exit, I think you're going to help them prepare for that. So I do want to point people to some resources, John, sort of where to follow you, where to find you, and sort of what you're doing. Is it a new class that you're starting, or is it just a new platform where people can learn?
Yeah, we just took some of our content and put it on Bitcoin101.fyi, and it's the why about Bitcoin, the beginning, getting people who are curious to help them understand, and learn, well, what are the reasons, actually a lot of times it's focused on 4 questions. It's, what problem is Bitcoin trying to solve? How does it solve it? Why is Bitcoin different than every other crypto? And how big is this problem? Which is the really interesting thing, because you always want to look at how big is a problem that something is trying to solve. So yeah, it's helping, we do it with McKinney Bitcoin, we do it in our local community, and now we're also monetizing some of that content and trying to reach both local, but a bigger community with it. So yep, I really appreciate you pointing that out.
Awesome. Yeah. No, and thanks for coming on the show, John. I really appreciate it. Love your Bitcoin meetups, the things that you guys are doing at them Bitcoin McKinney. I'm hoping that will continue to replicate throughout the entire state of Texas. We know a lot of things are going on here in Texas that are definitely pro Bitcoin. And as John said, it really is people, and I don't say this, to be, maxi or whatever, and we hear that language, but there really is a true difference between Bitcoin and crypto, and you can't conflate the two. Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and there always will be Bitcoin, and it's what you need to understand more than anything else. Crypto and stuff, if people want to play with that stuff and go, be my guest, but I highly recommend you don't. Highly recommend you stay focused on Bitcoin, because what we just saw. Listen, I was a victim of this whole C5 blow up, just like a lot of other people were. We all were damaged by it. Look at what happened with FTX. A lot of people that promoted FTX got damaged by it. So if we stick with Bitcoin and we stick with self-custody in responsible ways, you can be pretty sure you're going to be safe. But if you do anything outside of that, then you're on your own. So, John, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I look forward to, when is the next meetup, by the way? It's coming up, right?
January 27th.
27th. Okay.
Look,
good.
Yeah,
January 27th.
You're right. Something like that. But yeah.
Okay.
Look forward to seeing you again too, Paul. And
indeed.
Thanks for the show.
Anytime. Hey, thanks everybody for watching. Nick, thanks for producing this show. Really appreciate it. And folks, until next week, we're done. Thanks a lot.